progress isn't necessarily visible every single day. We place a strong emphasis on shipping as quickly as possible. Even during economic downturns, the demand for data storage and databases only continues to grow. The most important thing you can possibly do is actually talk to users who fit into the user profile for which you are trying to develop your product. Yeah, hi, my name is Zach Naimon, and I am the product manager here at Arctype. I'm 26 years old. I'm from Washington, D.C. originally. I spent some of my high school career in Beijing, and then I guess more recently I lived for 2 years in Kyrgyzstan in a small village while I did Peace Corps service. I guess that brings us up basically until I started working for Arctype. Yeah, so actually over the course of kind of my college career, I took a few motorcycle trips. The initial trip was just from Beijing over to the western end of China in Kashgar. And I embarked on that trip primarily because I wanted to explore and do something different, and I was feeling a little bit lost in general. Didn't really know what I wanted to do with myself. And a mentor of mine kind of suggested taking a long trip, so I kind of added the motorcycle aspect of it as a twist. Unfortunately, that first trip ended quite badly. I got in a pretty nasty wreck on the last day, and I spent 3 weeks in the hospital. And actually, the China Daily, like the largest newspaper in China, wrote a cover page story about it called 16,000 Reasons for Breaking a Leg. And I guess while I was in the hospital, I was reading all of these blogs by people who were also doing long distance motorcycle trips, and it made me want to actually complete one. So I decided I'd do another trip from Beijing to London the following summer, and I spent about 9 months planning it, figuring out all the logistics. I got some sponsors, and I kind of arranged a partnership with the Alzheimer's Association in order to raise money for charity along the way. So I embarked on that trip in 2016 in the summer, left from Beijing and arrived in London about 3 months later. I guess if I had to answer like how did this impact my professional life, I'd say more than anything else, embarking on a project of that size, which takes months and months of planning, in addition to kind of actually months and months of execution. You really learn how to make sure to plan everything out in advance and in great detail. But more importantly, when you're working on a large project, progress isn't necessarily visible every single day. When I would look at the map every evening after riding for 16 hours, 17 hours, I'd see zoomed out, of course, that my progress wasn't super huge as compared with the end result. But you just have to keep showing up every single day and just keep moving the ball forward little bit by little bit. And so yeah, I guess the main thing that I've learned from this trip was incremental progress is key to completing big projects. Yeah, so I actually have like a long background in technology. When I was in high school, I founded and ran a web design company, and I also worked for a few startups located in DC and in Beijing. I took a break from tech in college, but one thing that I took with me from all of my experiences, was basically there has always been a lack of adequately, high quality tools for developers to use when developing applications, specifically web applications. And this is an issue that's just starting to get addressed. The developer tools sector / space is super high growth right now. But for many years, especially when I was first getting started, there really weren't any high quality tools, particularly databases in general. I found that working with any sort of MySQL or Postgres database was incredibly difficult, and it was kind of hard to learn how to interact with the database. And the tools provided, primarily like PHP MyAdmin and MySQL Workbench, for example, really didn't do much to help. And so when I found Arctype initially, I just kind of had this light bulb moment. I downloaded it and tried it out on some of my own databases, and immediately the only thing I could think was, I wish I'd had this tool 10 years ago when I was actively developing websites for customers. And so I sent Justin an email basically saying that and asked how I could get involved. So yeah, I guess what it really boils down to is it's a product that I really, really, truly identify with. So Arctype in particular tries to solve a couple of problems. First of all, there are very few tools that provide a consolidated interface for all different kinds of relational databases in particular. Some tools do exist. I mean, you've got dbeaver, SQL Pro, and a couple of others. But I mean, basically, one of our primary goals is to provide this consolidated interface. Another of our goals is to bridge the gap on teams between technical and non-technical users. Specifically for non-technical users who still need access to data for their daily workflows in their roles. So for example, if you're a product person or a salesperson or even a less technical founder on a small to mid-sized team, you probably don't want to pay for any of the higher end data visualization and analytics tools. But that doesn't mean that you don't need kind of visibility on the database. And it also doesn't mean that you don't need to use the database as a source of truth. So what we wanted to do with Arctype was kind of build in all of these collaboration features such that it would be easy for technical members of teams to create a connection, write and save a couple of queries or dashboards that can then be accessed again and again and again by non-technical users as part of their daily workflows. So before I joined Arctype, Justin and Kevin, the two original members of the team, Justin being the founder, they initially started building Arctype as a more general internal tooling platform. So even once Arctype pivoted to more specifically focus on databases, a lot of the legacy internal tooling functionality remained. So in earlier iterations of Arctype, you could add scripts and automations and actions and all kinds of things that are a little bit more conducive to an internal tooling platform than to a database client. Over time, we've kind of slimmed down and narrowed our focus to be specifically SQL databases. So I guess that's basically how Arctype has evolved. Yeah, so obviously we started with the big three in terms of relational SQL databases. Those would be MySQL, Postgres, and SQLite, primarily because those are the databases that the bulk of developers that we talk to and that we know, and just in general, these are the most widely adopted and used databases for kind of production web applications and the like. So we started with those, and then we formed partnerships with various serverless database companies to build integrations for their different flavors of SQL databases as well. The reason why we chose to partner with these serverless database companies in particular, as opposed to developing, for example, a Redshift integration or a Microsoft SQL integration, is because we strongly believe that serverless databases are the future of the database space. And more than any other type of database, these particular pieces of software do not have any existing interfaces which support connecting. Well, I think that really boils down to the sector in which we operate, right? Which is not more, more broadly, it's the technology space, which obviously is not recession-proof as a whole, but we are very specifically, in the database niche. And as you know, even, during economic downturns, the demand for data storage and databases only continues to grow. Every single day, there's more data being stored, and there's more need for powerful tools to interact with this data. So I think that Arctype is kind of uniquely recession-proof because of that. When trying to determine product market fit, the most important thing you can possibly do is actually talk to users who fit into the user profile for which you are trying to develop your product. When you're asking these questions to these users in order to determine product market fit, it's really important to make sure that confirmation bias doesn't play a role in the answers they give. So for example, if you ask a potential user of your product, would you be interested in a product that does X? Or for example, would you be interested in a product that solves X problem that you might have? Or even, do you have X problem and is it big enough that you would pay for a solution to X problem? Any of these questions really lend themselves to confirmation bias. Users are more likely than not just going to answer yes. This will easily validate your idea, but won't actually help you determine product market fit. The pandemic did not drastically influence our business. Our model is fully remote and our team is fully distributed. So whether or not people were meeting in person really didn't affect our kind of day-to-day workflows. As far as kind of user adoption goes, I also don't think that the pandemic really played a big factor. Yeah, so talent shortage is a real problem that a lot of, especially small startups, struggle with. Small startups, especially early stage startups, are by nature very risky. And especially with a lot of less risky options in the job market, it's very difficult to attract talent. That being said, with small teams, what's most important is mitigating turnover. So basically, the best way to tackle the talent shortage issue is actually just to retain the talent that you have, whether that means paying talent more or making their kind of work-life balance a little bit better, or kind of any number of things that basically make employees happier to work for your team. Yeah, so we are fully distributed. Our founder, Justin, is in San Francisco. I'm in Washington, D.C. Our lead engineer is in New York City, and our three other engineers are in Virginia, Portugal, and India, respectively. So suffice to say, we're fully distributed. As far as outsourcing goes, because we're a small team and we're primarily product and engineering focused, we basically outsource everything else. So for example, all of the operations work, HR work, legal work, all that stuff is outsourced, and I guess more easily delegated. In addition to that, we obviously outsource all of our QA work as well. The primary source of churn, as we've discovered with Arctype, but I think even more broadly for almost any software as a service product, the largest source of churn is by far when users encounter bugs and kind of stability and performance issues in an application. So anything you can do to mitigate the number of bugs and issues that make their way into production deploy will have a direct impact on adoption and retention of users, which is an immense needle mover, especially for an early stage startup. For that reason, investing in QA absolutely is a value add for us. The most interesting problem that I think Arctype tackles, or is in the midst of tackling, is handling large amounts of data at scale. So obviously Arctype is a web application, and as a result, there are a lot of interesting problems that have to be tackled when dealing with incredibly large databases and large data sets. Because things have to be loaded into memory. There's all kinds of local storage idiosyncrasies across browsers and systems. And these are kind of like the primary challenges that I find really, really interesting and inspire me to come bring my A game to work every single day.